Welcome to the Casual Cinecast, powered by Cinelinx. My name is Chris.
My name is Justin.
And my name is Mike. Welcome to a Casually Criterion episode on David Cronenberg's Dead Ringers. You may have noticed it's been a while since we've had a Casually Criterion episode, so we're still in full swing of the summer movie season, but we did find some time to finally get another Casually Criterion out there. Thank you for all your patience. We will do our best to put out a Casually Criterion at least once a month going forward. So you can try to hold us to that.
Yeah. Or just do it. Do or do not, there is no try. What Criterion movie is that from? None.
Star Wars.
No Criterion movie.
Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah.
Nicely done, Chris.
Anytime, guys.
Yeah.
I'm excited about a Criterion movie. I haven't done that in a while.
And if you want to hold us to it, you can contact us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Casual Cinecast. You can join our Facebook group and talk TV and film with us or yell at us about Criterion Collection at facebook.com/groups/Casual Cinecast, or you can email us directly at casualcinemedia@gmail.com.
It's been a while since we've gone over upcoming Criterion releases. There have been plenty announced, lots of good stuff.
Yeah.
Do you guys want to go ahead and talk about some of the ones we're looking forward to?
Yeah, definitely.
Awesome. So Chris, Justin, guys, what has you excited?
Okay. I'm going to go first just because I want to talk about the one that has me most excited, which is probably obvious to you two, at least.
Typical.
Yeah. But I'm most excited about The Tree of Life by Terrence Malick, if you don't know that. But that comes out on August 28th, which is a little over a month from now. But it was announced a couple of months ago, so I've been looking forward to it ever since. This is one of my favorite movies of the past probably 10 years or so. I really love it. I hear there's a extended cut of the movie on there that I'm super excited to watch because despite how long that movie is, I want more.
How long
is the extended? Yeah, Jinx, you know, Coke.
Damn it.
Oh man, I want a Coke. Can we try to say something again at the same time? Because I want someone to owe me a Coke because I'm thirsty.
No, Justin.
No? Okay.
So do we know how long the extended cut is?
Sorry, I'm trying to stall for time while I try to do it. Okay.
Oh, is that what that was?
Yeah. Okay, so the original version of the film is on here, which is 139 minutes, and there is not an actual time of the new one, but it says new extended version of the film featuring an additional 50 minutes of footage. So if I do the math in my head, it's 189 minutes. So 3 hours and 9 minutes would be the extended cut.
Wow. I wonder if it's going to be more dinosaur special effects heavy stuff, or if it's just going to be...
They just stuck Jurassic Park into the beginning of it.
Yeah, it's just the full version of the ride that they go on in the beginning of Jurassic Park, explaining about dino DNA. But yeah, obviously, have you guys... I know, Mike, you've seen it. Have you seen this movie, Chris?
No, I haven't. And now I'm waiting until it comes out and I can watch the... I don't want to watch the extended one. I'm going to watch the regular one.
Yeah, watch the regular one first, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, but I'm definitely excited about it, especially how much you love this movie. And Mike, what are your feelings on it?
I also love it. I'm a big fan of a lot of Terrence Malick. At least I haven't really followed a whole lot of his career post Tree of Life. But Badlands,
Days of Heaven,
Thin Red Line, Days of Heaven.
Yeah. I love all of his movies that from
New
like
World.
Tree of Life and before.
Yeah, New World is actually, I think, is a very underrated movie.
It is. Well, yeah. I guess the other thing worth mentioning with this is that they changed the cover art. I don't know if you guys saw the initial announcement, but it was cover art that had some of the boys' faces, and I don't really remember exactly what it looked like now because it changed so long ago, but there was a big outcry of how bad the cover art was. So they've changed it to what it is now, which is Jessica Chastain walking on that sort of like salt plain thing.
Yeah, and it's also got different kind of landscapes, and like for the sky and then for the ground.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I like the new cover art. I didn't hate the original one. At least I wasn't thrilled with it or whatever, but I'm not one to like complain about Criterion cover art. Like, it's cool when it's cool, and when it's not, it's still usually a good movie inside.
Yeah, that's true. And it's still cooler than the original cover art we got back in like 2011.
Oh yeah, I've got the Blu-ray, so it's just like all those random like weird
freaking documentary
pictures. It does, yeah.
National Geographic documentary, like Planet Earth or something.
Yeah.
Or BBC, whatever.
Yeah, for sure.
Don't at me. I don't care who produces what documentaries.
Dang it. I was going to at you. Okay, so what else are you guys excited about?
I am excited about Brian De Palma's Sisters being re-released and getting a Blu-ray of it. Have you guys seen Sisters?
No, I haven't seen that one either. There's only a couple of them actually on here that I have seen. But I like Brian De Palma sometimes. In fact, I just watched Mission Impossible last night, the first one that he directed, so that one's a good one. How about you, Justin? Have you seen it?
I have not, but I own it, like the original DVD Criterion version of it, but I have yet to watch it. I just happen to have it, and I've had it for like years and not watched it yet.
We'll have to have a sisters party. I can come over and watch it.
Yeah, do it. Or I don't know, maybe I should wait till the Blu-ray since it's getting an upgrade, but maybe not. I don't know.
It is, well, I was about to say, I would like to see the Blu-ray of it because Brian De Palma is very good at like visually interesting horror shots and like very memorable like shots that just stay with you. Like there are shots from Dress to Kill that I will always remember. And that's not my favorite Brian De Palma movie, right? But the point is he has a very interesting visual style, and I think this is one of his more interesting movies, and I think his visual style really works in this film quite a bit. So that's all I really wanted to say about Sisters. It's really good. It's coming out on October 23rd. Yeah, give it a shot if you like Brian De Palma.
I do, and I will.
Yeah, so one that I'm excited about that I've watched as a child and I continue to watch today because it's such a great movie and such a fun movie is The Princess Bride, which I think is a unique pick for the collection. And I'm all on board for it with it. And I like the cover art. Have you guys seen the cover art for it?
Yeah, it looks like a storybook.
Yeah, I like that.
I'm pretty sure I bought a DVD of this from Walmart like 10 years ago that had like one of those slip covers that slides around the outside that was like this exact cover art. I'm pretty sure. Or something very, very, very similar.
There's a cover art that exists for one of the many editions of this movie where it's like the same image, but it's like you can like flip it upside down and it'll say The Princess Bride, whether the sleeve is upside down or not.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen that.
Yeah, for sure.
That one's pretty cool, but I like the Criterion one more. It looks like a book.
Yeah, I think I saw that it's supposed to be sort of like bookish, like the actual packaging.
Yeah, it kind of looks that way. So this being a unique pick, how do you guys feel about it? I know some people on the interwebs are a little upset that Princess Bride is part of the collection. What do you guys think?
I think it's cool. Like, I always like this movie. I think it's interesting. It's sort of a unique film that is, you know, a staple of, what's the word? Blanking on the word. I don't know. Society.
Genre?
Society or whatever. Pop culture.
It's important.
That's what I'm thinking.
It's very culturally relevant.
Yeah.
There's memes about it.
Exactly.
Like,
there's lines from it that you know, even if you've not seen the movie, because they are said so much or so much a part of like pop culture.
Right.
And also, it's Rob Reiner's second film, I believe, in the collection.
The first one being Spinal Tap?
Exactly. So I hope that this being in the collection might eventually lead to a re-release of Spinal Tap someday, too.
Yeah, if they can ever get the rights to it again, I suppose.
Yeah. I don't know, but maybe this is one small step that way.
Yeah, well, I think Princess Bride belongs in the Criterion Collection just as much as plenty of other movies that are already in there. If you're going to get mad that they're introducing this, then go back in time and, you know, get Michael Bay out of there.
Yeah, you know what's interesting to me? I don't know how people have the energy to be upset when every time Criterion announces a new slate of movies. I don't know how they have the time and energy to be upset about which movies are in the collection. You don't have to buy it.
Yeah, for real. And
there's plenty of other things to be upset about. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's like I'm sure it's easier to sell a Blu-ray of Princess Bride than it is to sell an Ingmar Bergman, or Akira Kurosawa movie, right?
Right. Or I imagine those are relatively easy compared to some of the other ones they have to, they have put out.
Even those,
Exactly. Yeah, I just name dropped some of the bigger ones that everyone knows. So that was shame on me for that. But yeah,
I know what you mean.
Basically what you said.
Yeah. Well, cool. Yeah, I'm definitely excited about that one. And if we're ready to move on, I've got another one I'm excited for.
Yeah.
What is that, Justin?
It is the Ingmar Bergman box set, which is massive. I don't know of a better word for it than massive. It basically has almost all, if not all, I'm pretty sure it's not quite all, but most of Ingmar Bergman's films, like his entire filmography. At least most of the important ones are in here.
Yeah, I'm looking at it now. It's huge.
Yeah.
It's got a 248-page book in there as well.
Yeah, it's just massive. I think there's been a bit of rumors about this coming out, so it wasn't a huge surprise to me when I saw it. It was kind of a matter of when, not if, they released this box set. Yeah, they finally announced it a couple weeks ago, and I just wish I had more money. That's what this makes me feel.
Yep, pretty much.
Yeah, does the Criterion Collection have a layaway program that you guys know of?
I don't know. They should get one.
Yeah.
Save up for the next Barnes & Noble sale.
Mm-hmm.
If there's still a Barnes & Nobles.
Yeah. But I think that, the price at this one, the SRP is $299.95, so this is definitely a wait for a sale if I ever have a chance or hope of buying it.
And even then, do you fork over the money to buy this gigantic box set, because then you can't use that money to buy lots of individual cool ones?
Yeah, and I already own so much of the individual Bergmans, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's the eternal struggle.
Yeah,
the road we walk.
Yeah, and despite the price, it's a really cool set, and it has a ton of great films in it. Every film that I've seen that's in this one, I love. I think is great. So, it's just cool. It's just super cool.
I want it because I actually watched your copy of Cries and Whispers. So I don't actually have my own copy of Cries and Whispers. And that movie is so good.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've watched it.
I watched it a couple years ago because I got the Blu-ray when they upgraded. So I wanted to see the cinematography because I believe that's award-winning cinematography, Oscar-winning cinematography.
Yeah, it's a great movie.
So I wanted to watch that, and it looks great.
All right. So the last movie I really wanted to talk about before we move on to Dead Ringers was the 1943 film by Ernst Lubitsch. Heaven Can Wait. And it's coming on August 21st. Have you guys seen this movie? Have you heard of this movie?
I'm familiar with a movie with the same title, but not this one.
I'm familiar with a movie that was a remake of a movie with the same title, starring Chris Rock.
You're thinking of Heaven Can Wait with Warren Beatty and then Down to Earth with Chris Rock, respectively.
Yes.
No, this has nothing to do with the Warren Beatty film or the Chris Rock film. This is actually about a rich playboy type who dies, and when he is waiting to be judged, he tries to convince, I guess it's the devil, that he deserves to go to hell, basically, because they're trying to send him to heaven, and he is convinced that he does not deserve it. So it's a very interesting concept, and throughout the course of the movie, he kind of recalls his story of why he thinks he deserves eternal damnation. So it's pretty cool.
An interesting premise. Yeah, I would definitely want to check that out.
Yeah, it's actually a much more interesting premise than the other Heaven Can Wait, I think.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, it is, because it's kind of like why would he feel that way, and what did he do that makes him think I should go to hell and argue for it, whereas the other one it's he wants to stay alive and not die, and so that one's just kind of easy, right?
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, Heaven Can Wait. check it out on August, or check out the current release of it now. Whatever.
The DVD, right? And it's being upgraded to Blu-ray.
The digital video disc.
Find it on VHS. Why not?
Yeah. You can actually probably go somewhere and start digging through old storage containers and try to find an old film reel of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you do find an old film reel of it, write into us and we'll set it up.
We'll take that off your hands for you.
Yeah, take off your hands.
We'll take care of it.
That way you don't have to worry about it.
All right, so before we move into our review of Dead Ringers, we wanted to go ahead and cut to a promo for our friends at the Film Inquiry podcast.
Oh, yeah.
The Film Inquiry Podcast Network has taken the talented writers from filminquiry.com and given them a new outlet to express their unique and informed opinions. The network has 3 shows that cover an array of topics. Filmography Inquiry discusses the entire works of your favorite directors or actors, giving each film a thorough examination. Junk About Movies takes new releases and puts a spin on them, creating fun brackets, rankings, trivia contests, and more. Finally, Planet Smollywood covers all the indies you need to know about. So subscribe to the Film Inquiry podcast on Apple Podcasts, Podbean, or SoundCloud. Follow us on Twitter at Film Inquiry Pod and visit filminquiry.com for the best movie coverage around.
Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Beverly Mantle.
By every scientific measure, they are absolutely the same. They share everything.
You haven't had any experience until I've had it too. Bev, you've got to try the movie star. She's unbelievable.
Oh, doctor, you've cured me. You mean to say there's 2 of them? They're twins, dear.
I think we should drop her, Bev. You drop her. I'm in love with her. I'll be in love if it does this to you, Candace.
Doctor, I think there's something wrong with you.
Okay, so before we get into this is an older film, so we are not going to be doing a non-spoiler section followed by a spoiler alert and then spoilers. We're just going to go straight into talking about the movie and spoiling the heck out of it. So if you haven't seen this movie and you're listening to a Dead Ringers podcast, you should probably stop, go watch the movie, and then come back. Yeah.
This is the point of no return.
Yes, exactly.
All right, Dead Ringers, written and directed by David Cronenberg, co-written by Norman Snyder, based on the book by Barry Wood and Jack Giesland, starring Jeremy Irons and Guinevere Bujold.
Bujold, maybe? I don't know. It's like a soft J, like yogging.
I apologize, Guinevere. I don't know how to say your last name, but you are starring in this movie.
It's true. So you can make fun of Mike for not starring in this movie.
It's true.
As well as not being able to say your name. So IMDb synopsis. We'll see how this one is. It says, twin gynecologists take full advantage of the fact that nobody can tell them apart until their relationship begins to deteriorate over a woman. Good.
Yeah, spot on. I like it.
Concise.
Yeah.
Yep. Good job.
As we've complained about before, there's no names in this to like trip us up. It's just pure story, and I love that.
Just 1 comma.
Yeah, true. Very true. First up, expectations for this movie. Mike, do you want to go first?
Sure. I had actually seen this movie before, but the first time it really didn't make much of a favorable impression on me. So I did relish the idea of watching it again. Cronenberg has always kind of been a director that's pretty hit or miss for me, but I think ultimately with more hits than misses. So yeah, I knew exactly what I was in for, and I was ready to give it another shot because it's been a few years. Yeah, so that's about it for me. What about you, Justin?
Yeah, for me, you can just take everything you said and play it over again. Just, I don't know, maybe modulate it so it sounds more like my voice.
Sounds good. I'll do that in editing.
Yeah, thanks. But yeah, so I've seen it before. I think we watched it for each of our first time at the same time. I remember neither of us liking it very much. So revisiting it was something I was looking forward to in a way and not looking forward to in another way, because I remember like really not liking it. But I wanted to give it another chance because, as you said, Cronenberg has some films that I really love. He has some films I don't like as well, but the ones I love make me want to revisit the ones I don't like again and see if there's something to them that I missed on a first viewing. So that's where I was going into this.
Yeah. And just a sidebar real quick before we ask Chris, I was kind of struck with the idea the second time I was watching it, because I did enjoy it more, I think, the second time. We'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute. But do you think the idea of, or do you think the reason that maybe it rubbed us the wrong way the first time is because it had the desired effect?
You know, that's something I always think about with Cronenberg's films. Like the ones I don't like, you know. I'm not totally sure if that's it, or maybe it's the Cronenberg, for me personally, that I had seen at the time that we watched it for the first time. Because prior to that, I had seen things like The Fly and Videodrome, and I had seen, I guess, like History of Violence. But my familiarity with Cronenberg, especially the earlier Cronenberg or the 80s-ish Cronenberg, was stuff more like Videodrome that was a little bit more horror, sort of weirdish. And this movie never quite goes there, so it wasn't really what I expected, especially with a name like Dead Ringers. I didn't even know it was about twins, so I thought it was something involving dead things or something. I don't know. Right,
yeah. Okay, you and I can talk a little bit more about what we thought was different this time versus the first time. Chris, what were your expectations of Dead Ringers? Had you seen it before?
No, actually, I hadn't seen it before. I'm just like you guys. I like Cronenberg. I'm probably more. I'm more like late Cronenberg, like the 90s and 2000s. Like after his body horror phase, like Videodrome and stuff like that. But he's hit or miss for me, and I was excited. I knew kind of what I was getting into, and that's kind of what I was thinking. I was excited and ready for something weird.
Let me ask you, as someone who is more familiar with late era Cronenberg, what is your favorite Cronenberg movie?
Yeah, well, those are my favorite movies of his. I would say either A History of Violence or Eastern Promises.
Yeah, are probably my favorite. I like History of Violence quite a bit.
Either one of those, probably History of Violence, actually. I'd be right there with you. But yeah, I think this actually may bridge that gap from Cronenberg body horror to Cronenberg like storytelling, you know, a little bit more mature, a little less body horror, you know, kind of stories. So,
yeah. Interesting. Okay. Yeah. So I agree with you. Of late Cronenberg, I think History of Violence is really good. I think of the early Cronenberg movies, not counting this one, I think Videodrome is one that you might like quite a bit, or you might not like at all.
Yeah, I have actually seen Videodrome a very long time ago. I don't exactly remember how I feel about it either. I remember, I mean, it made an impression on me. I remember the scene, and this, I guess, spoilers. Well, I guess I don't want to spoil Videodrome, but there's a specific scene that I remember very specifically. And yeah, that stands out to me, but it's been so long that I'm not, I'd have to revisit it in order to see how I feel about it.
I'm a huge Blondie fan, and Debbie Harry being in that movie is really cool to me.
Yeah.
Anyway, back to Dead Ringers. So are we ready to move into our overall thoughts of the movie?
Yeah, let's do it.
So yeah, I enjoyed it much more this time around. I'm still not overly enthusiastic about it, but I think it's quite good. And in many, many areas, I think it's even exceptional. I enjoy, like Chris, how mature and restrained Cronenberg seems here. He is like known, or at least in this era, he seemed to have been known for his body horror, his sexual subject matter, and like violence, right? So it's interesting to see him kind of hold back here and start to begin a more mature phase of his career.
Well, he gives us little tastes of those things, right? Without going completely overboard or over the top like he does in things like Videodrome.
Right, yeah, exactly. He's able to hold back and feel a little more restrained. I think Jeremy Irons is great in this movie.
Yeah.
This is certainly my favorite performance of his. He plays twins.
More than Scar?
More than Scar. He plays twins, but after a couple scenes of getting to know them, I usually always pretty much knew exactly who I was watching. Like, even when one twin is impersonating another twin, I think you're able to tell which one is which, because he is so good at differentiating their mannerisms and the way they even hold their face, you know?
Right. It's kind of like 4 different roles almost instead of 2.
Exactly. Yeah, it's insane. It's so good. Yeah, I didn't love it. It feels like maybe there are some issues that I have with pacing that we can get into later. But overall, it's incredibly chilling. It's eerie. It leaves you cold. And I recommend checking it out. Justin?
Yeah, so I also enjoyed this more on this my second viewing of it. The one thing that I remember being distracting or bothering me the first time I watched it still distracts me a little bit, and that's like the whole Jeremy Irons playing 2 roles. And I think it might be just as a filmmaker, constantly thinking about the ways that they're doing that, where they're having like, you know, we're seeing the back of a double's head, or, you know, where's the split in the screen, you know?
Yeah, I actually have in my notes the very first scene where they're like in college or whatever at their lab table. Yeah. And they have like they're both of them are there, and they have like the side of a double's face on like the right side of the frame. Yeah. And like all I could think about that whole scene was like, that is not Jeremy Irons.
Yeah. So I have a bit of trouble getting past that with this movie. And I don't know that that's a knock on the movie as much as it is just my personal life coming into it and my personal experiences. Maybe you could say that the movie's not drawing me in enough, you know, to do that. I don't know that I would go that far. I do think the like first 30, 40 minutes of this movie and the last maybe 20 to 30 are the best parts of this movie. I think it kind of drags in the middle where I struggle to kind of stay with it and stay interested in it. But I think you're right, Mike. One of the most interesting things is the few times that he does use the sort of gore, violence, or bloody stuff, I guess, and sex, like when he uses those in the movie versus using them constantly like he does in other things. Like, I find that really interesting, and that's something I want to get into later. It is. I think it's probably at about like a 6 out of 10 for me, but that's moving up from like what I would say about a 4 out of 10, how I felt about it the first time.
Yeah, so that's pretty low. Yeah, I would aim a little higher. I don't know. This conversation might change me a little bit, but I'm sitting at like a 7.5, 8 out of 10. I think it's okay. I think it's worth more than that. I think the main issues are pacing wise, but we'll get into that. I want to let Chris speak his mind first.
Yeah, for sure. That's all I have to say at this point. So, Chris, what do you think?
So far, from what I've gathered from what you guys have said, is I need to watch this a second time, because I think I'm where you guys were when you first watched it.
Okay, before you get going, let me ask you, do you think it's because it had the desired effect, or because it's just a flawed movie?
I guess I'm not exactly sure what you mean. So what I would say is you said something that was very specific, and it is like this movie will leave you cold. And I felt that way with this movie, but mainly because I didn't feel anything for the characters. Like I felt removed, and like I didn't necessarily feel super invested in the characters. So I did definitely feel cold. So what do you mean by the desired effect?
Okay, well, I would argue that this movie is supposed to leave you a bit cold and feel the desired. I don't know what the desired effect is. I don't want to speak for David Cronenberg, right? But right. What I imagine the desired effect is when watching something like this, at least, especially the second time. In my opinion, I don't know if you're ever supposed to get attached to these characters. I don't know that you're ever even supposed to like them.
Right.
This movie almost seems to not judge them one way or the other. This movie just shows you what they do, and it shows you their downfall. And it shows these two codependents that don't even have fully formed personalities of their own. Right. You know, you have one that's submissive and recoils from human interaction and sticks to work. And then you have one who thrives on human interaction and manipulation and can only thrive when the other one's doing all the work, you know? And the things they do and the way they treat other people, and especially the women that they're interested in, is terrible, right? It's wrong.
Really awful.
It's truly terrible. It's absolutely awful. And I don't know that we're ever supposed to get on board with them, but I don't think the movie's interested in judging them.
Yeah. So, I mean, the desired effect would be, Yeah, I could see that being the desired effect where, like, here are these people, we're going to watch them from a distance.
With cold indifference.
Yes, with cold indifference. So the thing I guess I would say about this movie is I watched it, I feel a little indifferent about it. I think there's some really interesting things. I think Jeremy Irons' performance, you're right, was great. Although I had a little bit of a harder time tracking the twins than you did. But I do think Jeremy Irons was really good in it. So yeah, it's just there's things that are really good, and I think there's more for me to get from it. And by you guys saying, oh, well, the second time around, we liked it more. And I think I need to spend more time in there and see what's in there to get more out of it, right?
Yeah, makes sense.
So yeah, I think that with Cronenberg's other films, at least in my experience, I don't think he's really the type of filmmaker that ever cares if you like his characters or not. I can't think of a Cronenberg movie where I've actually liked a character or, been rooting for a character necessarily.
Exactly. I was thinking the exact same thing before you said that. As you were starting to go down that road, I was thinking to myself, man, has there ever been a Cronenberg protagonist that is likable?
Yeah, I don't think so. So I don't think that's his interest, and I think you guys are right on that. I don't know that necessarily means that the desired effect is that you don't like the movie or that you feel weird and therefore don't like the movie. Like, I think that's a weird thing, and I may be misunderstanding what you're saying by desired effect, but like...
Yeah, no, I don't
do you mean like the tendency to... Or so go ahead.
Yeah, no, so I don't mean like he wants you to not like his movie, but I think the intention... And there's value in this kind of intention, at least in my eyes, is to leave you uncomfortable and not necessarily like turned off. I think he expects you to know the difference between disturbed in a good way and disturbed in like a bad way or bored.
Or just not liking a movie.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And that's what I mean when I say desired effect. And I'm just saying like, and a lot of times when people don't like movies, it's because it's challenging or expect something out of them. So I wouldn't put it past my younger self to watch this movie the first time and be manipulated the way I was supposed to be by Cronenberg, but me mistake that for discomfort equals bad.
Sure, yeah. And I think speaking for myself, what I remember feeling and what I felt during moments of this one, not as much as I felt the first time, but it was definitely more disinterest than discomfort.
Yeah.
I only had that at times in this one. Like, if we want to get into it, the whole sort of drug addiction phase of the, I guess I want to say like Meeker twin.
Beverly,
that's right.
Yeah, well, they both have a drug addiction phase.
That's true. But I guess
but it rotates.
his, after he calls to talk to the actress that he's dating and some other guys there and answers, and he freaks out without even really thinking about it. Or trying to like investigate further and goes into his like drug spiral. Like that whole section of the film to me was one where I was kind of ready for it to move on to the next phase of the film.
It was hard for me to tell how much time had passed because it seemed like she dumped them at the restaurant and then he got drunk and sad at the event, right? And made a fool of himself at the speech.
Right.
And then he sees her again at his place of work. And I had assumed it had only been a couple of days, right? But they were like talking like it had been much longer because she's like, I miss you and stuff like that, you know?
Yeah, I had that same issue. I was like, wait, how long has it been?
Yeah, so
definitely.
I don't know that I was disinterested in what was happening so much as I wasn't able to follow the timeline.
The story.
Right, so whenever he was flying off the handle, I was like, wait, hang on. It's only been like a week. But given the context of the movie, it feels like maybe it's supposed to have been longer, like much longer.
Yeah.
Yeah, like maybe they had been dating for much longer, or he had been living with her.
Or they had been broken up and she had like thrown the water in his face at the restaurant and he'd been in a funk for much longer.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the timing thing kind of bothered me a little bit. And one thing that confused me, because we kind of skipped over a lot of time from the time that like he called and heard a guy on the phone in her hotel room to him, downward spiraling. We kind of skipped over the whole segment or a lot of the time in between that. And I felt that like I almost needed to see a scene where he kind of refused to check up on it anymore or something, because I kept thinking of like, how did he not try one more time to call her and like talk to her about it? And maybe it's a thing with like character. I don't know if any of you guys picked up on it, but like feels like he just calls her once, hears a guy's voice, boom, panics, downward spirals, gets addicted to drugs, etc.
Wait, hadn't that only been 10 weeks? So she's going to go do a film shoot and she's going to be gone for 10 weeks, right? So he does the whole downward spiral within the 10 weeks. Like, that's when she comes back and she's like, why couldn't I get a hold of you?
Yeah.
You know?
I think so. I couldn't quite process in my head why there was never a second chance for him to talk to her, or him trying to get a hold of her again, or something like that.
Well, maybe it's because the other twin is so like kind of dominant. He has somebody else to latch on to at that point, and he doesn't need to go back to the girl.
This is Bev we're talking about. The twins' names are Bev and Elliot. Elliot is the more dominant one, and Bev is the one like downward spiraling. Yeah, I agree with you. Maybe there should have been more of a follow-up, but Bev is also not the most well-balanced human being, and he's also never had a relationship of his own, right?
Right.
He's essentially...
Neither of them are balanced, is what I was going to say. Like, they're two halves of one person, essentially.
Well, right, correct. But the half that is more adept socially is probably Elliot and not Bev, right? So right. I picture Bev just doing like the immature, like teenage boyfriend thing, right? Which is like overreacting and not necessarily processing things in the most mature way.
So do you think like he's handling this in the complete opposite and extreme opposite way that Elliot would? Because Elliot doesn't seem to really care about the women that he's with. Like, it doesn't bother him if they stay, if they go, whatever. And Beverly is the complete opposite, to the point where he will immediately lose his cool.
I think what happens here is Bev substitutes the girl for Elliot. So he gets attached to this girl in the same way that he was to Elliot. And then once the girl, as he perceives it, betrays him, he goes back to Elliot and substitutes Elliot for the girl again. Does that make sense?
Right.
No, it does. But also what I would say is that they do kind of address this before it happens. It seems like Bev wants his own experiences. He says like, I don't want to tell you about it. He wants to keep it to himself, I think is what he says.
Right.
There's another time whenever he says something similar and Elliot says, be careful. We're entering into uncharted territory. So neither of them have ever been independent from one another, right? They have a completely codependent personality type, like you were saying. They're two halves of one person, and neither half is equipped to deal with people without the other one, especially to please, an actress who's been around a while, and who's dated many men and knows crazy when she sees it,
Kind of. There is the part later on whenever he's breaking out of the apartment that Elliot has locked him in, where Beverly breaks out and he goes to her or starts talking to her, and he's like very clearly unstable and tweaked out, and she either doesn't notice or just is like, yeah, cool, I'll help you down this path further.
Yeah, no, I think her whole character is probably pretty simple and doesn't do things logically. Like, why would she ever even get back with Bev after like their initial fight in the restaurant after she found out what they were doing to her, right? I think her character in general doesn't really get enough to be believable.
Mm-hmm.
But so.
She's a foil for the two guys.
Yeah, exactly. So the scene whenever she's very concerned for Bev, so she calls Elliot to the movie set. I really like how she asks him if he likes beauty or something like that, and he says, I like glamour. And she's like, well, this is it. And then, and you don't really know what they're talking about at first because she's sitting in her makeup chair getting ready to go on. And then later when she turns her head, you see that like the makeup she's getting put on her face is like all bloody and bruised, and like her face is all busted up.
Well, and it seemed to me that it was only half of her face, too, at that, so like the one half, if you look at her from one angle, she's perfect, and then the other angle, she's been punched and mangled, right?
Yeah, exactly, and that's the glamour that he admires so much, and I just thought that was interesting.
Yeah. I did want to talk about the opening scene. What did you guys think about that opening scene with the two twins talking about sex?
Oh, those kids?
Yeah.
I don't know,
It was kind of funny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, more so than maybe anything Cronenberg's ever done that I can remember. Yeah. Like, it might be his funniest moment on film.
My favorite line is, women, they're different, and it's all because we don't live underwater.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that opening scene. I mean, I thought it was fun.
Yeah, I think that's the point when I was watching it this time. I was like, maybe this movie's not as bad as I remember, because that was funny. And
So let me ask you, since you guys have both watched it once and then you've come back to it now, what about the movie, if you can remember since you last seen it, but what is different and that you saw this time that you didn't see the first time that makes it better for you?
I think it's a bit of kind of knowing what you're in for and knowing what to expect and knowing some of the things that are going to happen, because you can kind of watch for the signs and the character traits that lead up to things that you know are coming.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
I think that is what was most interesting, like the second time.
Yeah, so I kind of agree with that. The first time, I didn't buy the journey that led us to the third act. And the third act, the success of it entirely depends on if you follow that journey or if you track it with Bev and Elliot, right? And the first time I didn't. The second time I did. And I think it has a lot to do with, like, I knew what was coming, so I was able to just look for all the foreshadowing. Lots of talk about Siamese twins and wanting to separate them, you know? So I just think a lot of it's just knowing what you're in for, maybe seeing more Cronenberg. I think this might have been one of the first Cronenberg movies that I'd seen. I can't remember. But yeah, knowing what you're going to get.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, so what do you guys make of the connection between Beverly and him being a gynecologist? Or I guess they're both gynecologists, but I feel like we mostly see Beverly working, unless I got confused at some point as to which one. I think we see Elliot do some stuff, but...
Well, Elliot, like, is the talker. He's the wheeler and dealer, and it feels like Beverly puts out, like, 2 people's worth of work. And Elliot, like, does the talking for, you know, and the dealing for 2 people, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Right. So we mostly see Beverly doing the actual gynecological, I'm not sure if that's the right word, but the work there.
Right.
And he's the one that gets very interested and attracted and, you know, I'll say falls in love with the woman. And when he's rejected, that's when he starts to turn very weird with his gynecology, I guess, where he's hurting the women that he's examining and then designs those sort of weird tools to use on women that starts hurting them and is obviously going to mutilate anybody he tries to use on them or use them on, right? Is that as simple as he hadn't really had that experience with a woman, at least as far as like getting attached and getting his heart broken or whatever, and then him turning on the woman or the female, the vagina, in a way?
What was it that he said when he hurt the older lady and had kind of accused her of having sex with a Cocker Spaniel? He's talking to his brother and he says, there was something wrong with her body. It wasn't him that was hurting her. It was just that there's something wrong with her body inside.
My tools are fine, but there's something wrong with all these women. All the women are deformed or whatever.
Yeah, so it seems like because she, the woman he was in love with, had that mutation, and in his perception he was scorned by her, I guess he starts doing this whole like, I hate women and I'm going to take it out on them perspective, right? And start seeing deformities and the same mutations in them and starts holding them responsible for being mutated and different, you know?
Yeah.
Whenever they probably aren't, but he's just incapable. He's blurring the lines between sanity and insanity here, I guess.
Yeah, for sure.
And also, there's the conversations and the hallucinations and the dreams of him perceiving he and Elliot to be conjoined, right? And they actually talk about conjoined twins and wanting to separate them both. So it's almost like they view themselves as a mutation, even though they're not technically, but they view themselves almost as like Siamese because they're so intertwined, even though they're not.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like Siamese attached at like the soul or
right, exactly. So
brain or something.
Yeah. So
attached to the emotions.
Yeah, I don't know. So there comes a point where I guess he wants to disconnect himself literally from his twin, but it ends up becoming doesn't work because they're not really connected.
Yeah. So are we at a spot where we can move in, since we're already talking about them being connected? Are we at a spot where we can move into the end where where he tries to disconnect them?
I'd say so, because I was going to ask about that.
About them being connected, I was wondering, So at the very end, he has to disconnect himself in order to be with the girl, right? That's kind of what I got from it. And so he uses those tools that he made up to eviscerate the other twin, essentially. What do you guys make of this scene?
Well, is it that he has to separate himself to be with the girl, or is it that he's come back from being with the girl Bev has, and he's a bit more normal? He's not in his like withdrawal junkie sort of stage at that point, and he finds Elliot, who is completely distraught, in the shower. Is it that at that point they kind of realize that without the other one they can't, or they're so dependent on the other one that they like fall apart, and it almost doesn't make sense of like why that would then make them want to like separate themselves from each other, but it's almost like, look at what we do to each other. You know what I mean? Maybe we should try this. Does that make sense?
When you say try this, does that mean try one of us being dead?
I guess so. That's a little of what confuses me about that scene. So what do you think, Mike?
So at this point, Elliot has pretty much taken on the personality traits of Beverly in his addicted state, right? The lines between them are starting to become more and more blurred. They no longer have complementary personality traits anymore. It's just kind of becoming one person, it seems like. I don't know. I guess in Beverly's mind, they are so connected, and as long as they are connected, he'll never be equipped to deal with the outside world, maybe? So I guess in his mind, in order to remove himself from his twin, this is the only way to do it. Or it could be that he is essentially committing a form of suicide.
Right. Is his intention, because I'm not sure of his sanity, Bev's sanity even here, is his intention to kill his brother or just separate him, and he thinks that with these tools that this is a way to separate?
I think in the hysteria, the intention is to separate them. Because
when he wakes up, he's not
making eye contact with what's going on.
You know,
he's
definitely surprised by what he sees.
Yeah,
when he
and
sees
also
Elliot dead.
Right, and then he also makes the phone call, and when she answers and asks who it is, he's got no answer for her. He doesn't know. He doesn't know who he is. We're not even completely sure who he is at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah. I will say that is one of the moments that it did impact me in terms of like the most, I guess, in terms of Jeremy Irons' performance, is when he wakes up and he's just like saying Elliot's name.
Yeah. It's like almost like Ellie.
Ellie, over and over again. And we hold on that moment for so long.
And he's like tapping his thigh a little bit, like nervous to look.
Oh, it's so good. It's so good.
Yeah. And then like the background, it's so out of focus, and you just see like the blurry red, you know?
Yeah.
And it's just truly upsetting. One thing I wanted to talk about before we get too far talking about the end is the dance scene.
Yeah. You know what that reminded me of that we've recently watched was the Blade Runner threesome scene.
Oh, yeah.
Did that strike a bell to any of you guys?
No, I didn't think of that scene in particular, but I can see how you would. That scene was odd to me. You see Elliot telling, what was that girl's name? The redheaded girl?
Carrie.
So you see Elliot telling Carrie, you know, exactly where to place her hands on Bev. Put your hand here on his shoulder blade and here on his side. Elliot's body language is kind of dominating the entire dance. It's dominating both Beverly and the girl, right? And Bev's posture is very submissive, I guess, at this point. And I just thought that was very, very interesting just from a performance perspective, right? And knowing who these guys are and what they're all about. Just in one simple shot while they're both standing there. Just in the way they stand and hold their weight and the way they dance, you see their entire dynamic. One controls everything. One needs to be controlled.
That's interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. And that's an interesting scene. Like it's full of like tension and sexual tension, I think. I don't know if that was just me.
No, definitely. It's weird. It's almost like homoerotic, but it's almost like Elliot enjoys seeing and just knowing that Beverly is happy and being pleasured by someone almost more
receiving pleasure.
Yeah, almost more than like he enjoys it getting it himself, it seems like.
Yeah, there was and what your explanation makes a lot of sense. What I kind of took away from it was that he wanted to do these things to Beverly, but he couldn't because of social rules, and so he was acting through the girl, like putting the hands where he would want to put them. But your explanation actually makes a lot of sense. Like, no, this is the way to do it. He's told me this before. That actually makes a lot of sense, and it's pretty awesome.
Yeah, and unless there's any more that you guys want to say about that, I have another thing to kind of piggyback off that.
Go for it, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, knock yourself out.
Something that I was thinking about during some of the scenes in this movie, I think we've talked about how there's a bit of a restraint in showing sex in this film, but there is a couple of scenes involving sex, right? There's the scene where Elliot is with the actress and he has her tied up. Or is it Elliot or Beverly? I got confused then. Where he has her like tied up with like the surgical tubes and clamps.
That's Beverly.
And is having sex with her. That's Beverly?
Yeah, but after he's had a pep talk by Elliot.
Okay, yeah, right. That's right.
Oh, well, okay.
So you see, of that scene, there is the scene where I believe it's Elliot orders the two twins, and he's like, "So I can tell you two apart. Like, I want you to call me Bev and you to call me Ellie." Mm-hmm. So we have a couple of little sex scenes, but something that I always find very interesting in Cronenberg, and the first Cronenberg movie I ever saw was History of Violence, and it has a sex scene in it that is pretty off-putting and disturbing. But
oh yes,
the way that David Cronenberg handles sex or treats sex is very, very dark and off-putting, and like
blunt.
It always makes me uncomfortable. Like I don't know that any of his characters ever seem to be like fully just enjoying sex. Like sex seems to be, I don't know what the word is, but it seems it always feels like a vice.
Yeah, no, it's always exploring the darker side of sexual nature and sexual perversion in all of his movies.
Yeah.
What was that one with Viggo Mortensen and Michael Fassbender and Keira Knightley?
A Dangerous Method.
Yes. That one explored
that's what that movie is entirely about.
Yeah, quite a bit. I thought it was fascinating. I remember liking that movie quite a bit when it came out. But a lot of people didn't. And I totally get that because Cronenberg deals with sex in very uncomfortable ways sometimes.
Yeah. But I don't know. Every one of his films is always at least interesting on that level to me when I watch like the way that he handles sex and the way that he portrays sex and the way that it makes you feel as a viewer watching it, right? Like it doesn't, in no way does it ever in any way like turn you on.
Right. No, it's never titillating. It's always uncomfortable and like you're seeing behind the curtain, and it usually like tells you about their character and something about their character that you wish you weren't seeing.
Yeah.
You're like, oh man, I didn't want to know that about this guy, but that's also interesting at the same time.
But yeah, I just wanted to bring that up. I think that's a staple of his work that I always tune in on and, think about. Yeah.
I thought about that a lot when I was watching this movie this time, actually, during the scene whenever he has like the surgical tubing and she's all tied up and he's got like the instruments there, like the surgical instruments there to like keep her basically restrained. Yeah. The imagery in that is very interesting.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Like even the way they're posed. So yeah, I agree. It's always treated much like a vice, and it's always treated and portrayed as like sort of like a dark side of something we're not supposed to talk about in public. Even The Fly has a little bit of that, in my opinion.
Yeah, so I don't remember The Fly well enough to remember those parts of it, but I imagine if it's in there, it's that way.
I have kind of a odd question. So when they discover, or when she confronts Bev about him being schizophrenic, she says it's like I get laid and it's a mild lay, or it's like a medium lay. It's not very good. And then I have the best sex ever. Which twin is giving the better sex?
Elliot, right?
Well, if Bev was the one with the surgical tubes, I feel like it might be Bev.
Wasn't that
later when they're talking and she seems to know the difference between them?
Mm-hmm.
She talks about to Bev. She's like, he knows how much I like you and this and that. And I don't know. I think she probably initially started the relationship with Elliot because he starts all the relationships. But right. I think the moment she realized she wanted to keep seeing him was always Bev. I don't know where the sex comes into that, or which one was better.
And that's not necessarily important, but that was a question that I had when she asked it, like, well, which one was the good lay and which one was the bad, you know?
Yeah.
Well, I'm pretty sure the implication is that Elliot sleeps with her the first night and Bev sees her the second
next
time
day.
and she says, like, I'm still shaking from what you did to me last night.
Yeah, she was pretty wowed.
And it's for sure Bev that she says that to, and Bev doesn't know what happened to her. Like, I think he knows Elliot slept with her, but he doesn't, he didn't do it to her.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Is there any point in this movie where you start to question what's actually happening and what might be fantasy? And the reason that I ask that is during Bev's downward spiral, and he makes those tools and, like, he's operating on them, and I guess I kind of find it a little far-fetched, a little hard to believe that he is going to use these tools and the people that are working with him are going to assist him and let him use those tools. And they kind of don't, but, like, it seems like no one catches on to how weird he's being for a while. And, like, even getting those tools into the room, it seems like someone would have noticed or something. And I part of me was wondering, like, is this a bit, like, dreamlike or not real, or is this just, like, it's so far-fetched and I'm supposed to buy into it?
To me, a doctor of reputation like they were could get away with a lot before they're like, whoa, wait a second. They were already on the cutting edge of their field, right? And I think that they were unsure of what was happening in that surgical room when he's about to use those tools. And I'm pretty sure they would have stopped him at some point. But I think you can get away with a lot if you have a good reputation and you are the boss, right? So
yeah, I think if the past 12 months has showed us anything, it's that if you sound like you know what you're talking about and you speak with enough authority, people will go along with you. And
what does that have to do with the last 12 months?
Oh, nothing. But if you have your boss who, like, runs a practice and is, like, there to be, like, people pay to come to this guy, and he busts out some tool that you're not familiar with that looks scary, and he tells you, like, this is what's happening. Even if you have your second guesses, I don't think you're going to be like, hang on, I'm a nurse and I'm pulling the plug on this whole thing here. You know what I mean? Like,
that happens to me now. The doctors pull out a scary looking thing and I'm like, wait a second, what's that? And they're like, okay, then go ahead.
Yeah. So to answer your question, I don't it could be a little bit more of like maybe like a dream haze, but I think I took it at face value.
When he's getting dressed, that was pretty amazing. What do you think of the imagery of that? He looks like a priest getting dressed before the surgery. What did you guys think of that?
I didn't even pick up on that.
Yeah, I didn't think about it in those terms. I mean, I think it's a beautiful image.
But he has like the collar and everything. I just got the priest image in my head as he like puts his arms out and they're like dressing him. Maybe that's just me, but
it reminded me of Star Wars, if we're gonna be real.
That's awesome. What part of Star Wars?
Didn't the Red Guards from The Last Jedi?
Oh, okay. All right, cool.
That's what I was thinking about, even though, obviously Dead Ringers came out way before. But maybe that's where they got it for The Last Jedi.
Yeah, Dead Ringers definitely influenced The Last Jedi. You heard it here first, guys. I had one last thing, too. So there's the last image of the movie. That, I think, is definitely fantasy. But what does that mean to you guys? So let me explain the last image real quick. It's the two twins curled up, like cuddling each other, essentially. This is after we saw the one dead. So what does that mean to you guys?
I mean, I think it's, reminiscent of the two of them in the womb, curled up together inside of like obviously they're not inside of anything, but that like the positioning I think would be similar to that.
Yeah.
And considering what they've just done and why they've just done it, he would try to maybe return to that state a little bit.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, was that the dead body, or is that fantasy or like a coda for us to see after the movie? Does that make sense?
So I took this whole thing, separating himself from his twin, is more of a form of suicide.
Mm-hmm.
And even after that phone call takes place and he doesn't know who he is, I take that more as he's not going to be able to function because he is only half a person, essentially, right? And you can't live as half a person. So I essentially take it as he most likely goes back to that office and just lays down and dies.
Yeah.
Okay, I was thinking that too, but I never saw any. I mean, like his cavity, like the chest had basically been opened up, so I was kind of looking for like more blood underneath it. But it could be that I just, that was looking too detailed.
Well, I think either way, figuratively or literally, Bev is dead, as is Elliot.
Yeah, okay. And I think you can take away the same things from it.
Either way, yeah.
Regardless.
Interesting. Well, this is definitely a film that's worth talking about after you watch it, right? Even though I wasn't fully on board, and I think I'm going to need to watch it a second time at some point to return to it. But yeah, I'm glad we had this conversation for sure.
Yeah, much like the twins, Beverly and Elliot, if you've just seen this movie and not talked about it, you've only got like half of a experience.
Yeah, half the picture.
You need both sides.
That's how I feel if I don't talk to you guys about a movie afterwards. I've only seen a third of the movie.
We're dependent on each other now.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think this is probably in the upper half of David Cronenberg that I've seen, because some of his movies, like I said, I don't really like. I think it gets better on reflection, upon talking about it, upon seeing it again. Unlike this time where I was kind of partially dreading watching it, I look forward to a rewatch of this someday, I think.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I hadn't really thought about this movie one way or the other over the past few years. It was never considered in my, even Cronenberg movies that I liked. Having seen more Cronenberg movies and grown to like them since the first time I saw this one, I think that had a lot to do with it too. Just acclimating to his sensibilities and his, in my opinion, his very cold, removed style.
Yeah, that makes sense to me.
Mm-hmm. All right. Anything else, anyone?
No, I think that does it for me.
All right. Thanks so much for listening to this Casually Criterion episode on Dead Ringers. Before we go, we wanted to go ahead and announce some changes to the way we're going to be doing the Casually Criterion episodes from here on out. So normally we've gone in spine order, which has been working out so far, but since we're only averaging about one of these a month, we thought there would be a more interesting way to pick the Criterion movies going forward. That way, if there's a favorite, that's spine number 300, you don't have to wait forever for us to get to a specific favorite. We can kind of change it up each month. So
yeah, I'm pretty sure some films would take us like 200 years to get to, and we just don't have that. We don't have that kind of time.
Yeah. So
speak for yourself. I have that kind of time.
Well, Chris does, but for the rest of us, we think we've come up with a pretty fun way to kind of change that up a bit.
So what we're going to do is we're going to start with themes. Each of us, myself, Mike, and Chris, we're going to pick a theme, and that could be something like French New Wave films or blind spots, films we haven't seen, or, Fellini films, right? Or maybe even something more clever than that. And we're each going to pick a theme. What we're going to do is then put that out into Twitter and Facebook on a poll where you can vote on your favorite theme. Once you guys decide on the theme, we'll then each pick a film within that theme from the Criterion Collection and put that out as a poll. And then you guys can vote, and whichever one wins, that's what we'll do our Casually Criterion episode on for that month.
So let's say, for example, we each choose a theme, and the theme that wins is 1960s.
Yes.
Each of us would then choose a Criterion film from anywhere in the collection that applies to the term 1960s, or applies to the theme 1960s.
Yeah, and I guess that could be released in the 1960s, or I guess it could be set in the 1960s.
Exactly.
It's kind of up to our interpretation.
Right. The looser the interpretation, the more fun it could possibly be. And then you guys will vote on whichever movie you think sounds the best out of the theme.
Yep. And yeah, I think it should be fun. It should allow us to cover the films that people want the most, I think.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to making up themes and coming up with movies within those themes. It's going to be a lot of fun, guys.
Exactly. So let's kick it off now, shall we?
Let's do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So in order to choose our next Casually Criterion, we're each going to choose a theme right now. And by the time you're listening to this, the poll will be out on Twitter and Facebook for you to participate in.
So yeah, I guess without any further ado, do you guys want to do it?
Let's go.
Let's do it.
So I'll go first, and I'll explain what we're doing this month. We thought it would be kind of fun since we're getting ready to do our Mission Impossible catch-up episode, and as well as Mission Impossible Fallout episode. We've all kind of got Mission Impossible brains right now, so we thought we'd base our themes kind of around Mission Impossible, which was fun. I had a good time doing this and thinking of ideas.
Absolutely, me too. So, yeah. Justin, what was your theme that you chose?
So my theme is cruisin', and I did air quotes around the cruise part of cruisin'. You guys couldn't see it, but hopefully you could hear it in my voice. And now I've told you. So yeah, cruisin'. So that could be, something like a movie based around a car, something like
Two-Lane Blacktop.
Well, I guess Two-Lane Blacktop comes to mind. Y Tu Mama Tambien, where they take a road trip. Could be very important. Weekend by Jean-Luc Godard has a lot of cars in it, even though the particular scene that has a lot of cars in it, they're not exactly cruising, if you know what I mean. Or it could there could be a cruise ship involved. Of course, we've already done A Night to Remember. But yeah, so right. That's my theme. So who wants to go next?
I'll go next. So the theme I wanted to choose would be espionage. It doesn't have a cool pun in the title, like cruisin', but I do think espionage would be a fun theme to explore within the Criterion Collection. So
yeah, absolutely. And there's plenty to choose from in there.
Absolutely. There are so many movies where espionage could definitely work. All right, Chris.
So mine is if you choose to accept it. Play on your mission if you choose to accept it, but this theme could be all sorts of things. If you choose to accept your reality, or if you choose to accept a gift, or if you choose to accept love. I think that's a really fun theme for us to do. We've already done Grand Illusion, but that's an example of people that have moved past and they hadn't accepted the new rules of society, and I think that's going to be a fun one. So vote for me is what I'm saying. A vote for me is a vote for fun.
Mine is cruising. That sounds way more fun than yours.
No.
A vote for me is a vote for pun.
Damn it. You got me there.
Yeah. Cool. Well, yeah, so these will be up on Twitter and Facebook by the time you're hearing this, so go out and vote.
All right, so again, vote on that theme, and we will each choose a movie within that theme to also vote on. And we will keep the progress of the polls updated on the show.
Yes.
So keep listening.
Can't wait, guys.
Yeah, and as always, thanks Jake Wagner Russell for doing our intro and outro music. If you want to hear more of his music, you can do so at soundcloud.com/bopscotch.
All right, next week we'll be putting out a recap episode of all the Mission Impossible movies leading up to Mission Impossible Fallout. So join us. It should be a blast. We've got a poll going on Twitter and Facebook to vote for your favorite Mission Impossible movie. So there's still plenty of time to get the votes in. It seems like Ghost Protocol is cleaning up, though.
Yeah, so if you don't like Ghost Protocol or like other ones more, you need to go on and vote. And if you want to, you can do that at Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram. Our name is @CasualCineCast.
Thanks so much for listening, guys, and we'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.
See you later.
Yeah, I only have 4 more movies to watch, and I'm all caught up. That's my mission, if I choose to accept it.
Better get watching.
Yeah.
Goodness.
4 days left. At least a movie a day.